The crystalline spires of Drakthara pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns that hung over the dragon realm. Within the largest tower, carved from a single piece of obsidian mountain, Queen Ashvara sat upon her throne of molten stone, listening to another delegation beg for mercy. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Scales of deepest crimson covered her draconic form, each one etched with ancient runes that pulsed with barely contained power. Her eyes, golden and slitted, held the weight of 3,000 years, 3,000 years of conquest, of war, of survival. She was the last of the old dragons, the queen who had united the fractured clans under one banner through blood and fire, and she was so very, very tired. "Your Majesty," the ambassador from the Kelvin sector groveled, his 6 arms pressed against the floor in supplication. "We ask only for an extension on the tribute. The stellar plague has denied." Ashvara's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The tribute will be paid in full, or your world will burn." Next, the ambassador was dragged away, and Ashvara felt nothing. She had felt nothing for centuries. It was easier that way, safer. The universe respected strength, and sentiment was weakness. Her own clutch mates had taught her that lesson when they'd tried to kill her in her youth. The galaxy had reinforced it every day since. A commotion at the entrance caught her attention. Her elite guards, towering Draconeer warriors in bio-enhanced armor, were blocking someone's path. "Please," a young voice called out. "I just want to see the queen." "I have something for her?" Ashvara's eyes narrowed. "Let them through." The guards parted, revealing the most unusual sight Ashvara had witnessed in decades, a human child, no more than 8 standard years old, standing in her throne room. The girl wore simple clothes, a faded blue dress and worn shoes, and clutched something wrapped in cloth against her chest. Her brown hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her dark eyes were wide but not with fear, with determination. "You are human," Ashvara observed, her massive head lowering to study the tiny creature. "From the colony ship that crashed in the northern wastes 3 cycles ago?" The girl Jassy, according to the identification chip, all refugees were given nodded vigorously. "Yes, Your Majesty." "From the Prometheus?" Ashvara had permitted the human survivors to settle in the wastes, barely habitable lands she had no use for. They were beneath her notice, irrelevant to her empire. "What do you want, child?" "If your people need more supplies, submit a formal request through the proper channels." "No, Your Majesty," Jassy said, taking a step closer despite the warning growls from the guards. I came to bring you something. Today is your birthday." Silence fell across the throne room like a physical weight. Ashvara's guards exchanged confused glances. The few courtiers present stared in disbelief. "My birthday?" Ashvara repeated slowly, the word foreign on her tongue. "Yes." Jassy's face lit up. "Daniel, he's my friend from the colony. He's really good with computers. He hacked into the planetary database to find out when you were hatched. It was exactly 3,047 years ago today." Ashvara felt something strange stirring in her chest, something she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten it existed. Why would this matter to you?" Jassy carefully unwrapped the cloth, revealing a small cake. It was crude, clearly made with limited supplies, some kind of synthetic flour, reconstituted eggs, and what looked like preserved fruit on top. A single candle, made from recycled polymer, stood in the center. "Because everyone should have a birthday cake," Jassy said simply. "Daniel and I made it together. We had to save our rations for 2 weeks to get enough ingredients. And Daniel had to build a little oven from spare parts because we don't have a real one yet. It's not much, but—" She looked up at the Dragon Queen with such earnest sincerity that Ashvara felt her ancient heart crack. "Happy birthday, Your Majesty." For 3,000 years, Ashvara had celebrated her hatching day alone, marking another year of survival in a hostile universe. No gifts, no well wishes. Just another day of maintaining power through fear and strength. Dragons didn't do sentiment. Dragons didn't do ... birthdays, and yet this tiny human child, who had every reason to fear her, who came from a people barely clinging to survival on the least hospitable part of her world, had spent 2 weeks of food rations to make her a cake. Ashvara's voice caught. Something she couldn't remember happening in millennia. I have never had a birthday cake? Jassy asked, her eyes widening. Not ever? Ashvara shook her massive head slowly. Dragons we do not celebrate such things. We mark the passage of time, but we do not. She trailed off, unable to find the words. Jassy's expression transformed from surprise to fierce determination. She climbed up the steps to the throne, each one nearly as tall as she was until she stood directly before the queen. Then this is even more important here. She held out the cake with both hands. Ashvara stared at the offering, her predator's eyes taking in every detail. The cake was lopsided, the icing uneven, the fruit placement haphazard. It was the most imperfect, beautiful thing she had ever seen. With one carefully controlled claw that could slice through starship hulls, Ashvara took the small cake. It looked absurdly tiny in her massive talons. You're supposed to make a wish and blow out the candle, Jassy whispered, pulling a small igniter from her pocket and lighting the candle. A wish? Ashvara asked. Something you want. Something you hope for. Something you dream about. Dreams. When had Ashvara last allowed herself to dream? When had she last wanted anything beyond mere survival and dominance? She looked at the flickering candle, then at the child who had brought it. This small human who had somehow seen past the monster, past the tyrant, to the lonely being beneath. Ashvara closed her eyes and made a wish she hadn't known she carried until this moment. Then she blew out the candle with a gentle breath that should have incinerated it, but instead extinguished it perfectly. And then, to the shock of everyone in the throne room, the dragon queen, the unconquerable Ashvara, who had never shown weakness in 3 millennia, felt something warm and wet roll down her scaled cheek. A tear. Your Majesty? Jassy asked softly. Are you okay? Ashvara looked at the child, and for the first time in 3,000 years, she smiled, not the predatory grin that preceded destruction, but a real, genuine smile. Yes, little one, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I believe I am. She carefully set the cake aside and lowered her head to Jassy's level. Thank you, truly. This is the most precious gift I have ever received. Really? Jassy beamed. Daniel said you probably wouldn't care, but I told him everyone cares about birthdays deep down. Daniel is this boy you mentioned? My best friend. He's 10 and he's super smart. He wants to be an engineer when he grows up. Ashvara considered this. I would like to meet this Daniel. And I think... She paused, making a decision that would have been unthinkable an hour ago. I think your colony deserves better lands. The southern valleys, perhaps, with proper housing and resources. Jassy's eyes went wide. Really? Oh, thank you, Your Majesty. On one condition, Ashvara added, and Jassy's excitement dimmed slightly. You and Daniel must visit me again, perhaps? Perhaps you could teach me more about these human traditions. Birthdays and, She hesitated, the word feeling strange. Friendship. Jassy's smile could have lit up the entire throne room. We'd love to. And next year, we can make you an even bigger cake. As the child was escorted out by significantly more gentle guards, Ashvara sat back on her throne, the small imperfect cake resting beside her. She looked at it for a long time, studying every detail. Committing it to memory. For 3,000 years, she had ruled through fear and power. Believing that strength alone could protect her, that sentiment was weakness. That connection was vulnerability. A human child had just taught her something the entire galaxy couldn't. That sometimes the greatest strength was allowing yourself to feel. That sometimes the mightiest gift was the simplest. That sometimes even a dragon queen needed to remember what it felt like to be seen not as a monster, but as someone worthy of a birthday wish. Ashvara carefully broke off a small piece of the cake and tasted it. It was dry, slightly burnt, and the sweetest thing she'd ever experienced. She wept then, truly wept, letting 3 millennia of loneliness and isolation flow out of her. And when she was done, she made a decree that would echo through her empire. From this day forward, the human colony would be under her personal protection. Any who threatened them would face her wrath, not because humans were useful, not because they were powerful, but because a little girl named Jassy and a clever boy named Daniel had reminded the dragon, queen, that even after 3,000 years of war and survival, there was still room in her ancient heart for something she'd thought long dead: kindness, connection, hope, and birthday cake. End.